Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is Once Upon a Time. What if our lives are epic stories that we ourselves have crafted and continue to craft with all the triumphs and tragedies, the passions, the drama? So it should be a fun conversation to explore this perspective, this possibility. But before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. Great to have you here this morning. And welcome to everybody else who's joining us. So today we're talking about the story of our lives, once upon a time. And I think this is such a useful way to consider our lives because it gives us some distance potentially, particularly if we allow ourselves to imagine or experience or connect to that we are spirit having a physical experience, that we are embodied, that the we or the I that I am is greater than this physicalness that presents in the world, and that we're having an experience. And when we think about story, there is an arc to a story. You know, there's tragedies, there's triumph, there's love, there's anger, there's the spectrum of experience, right? And there's tribulation in the hero story. There's tribulation and then triumph, right? And if we can look at our lives in this way and stand back from the vantage point, well, to create a vantage point from which to stand back and observe and recognize all the dramas, we also have the opportunity in the context of our life to rewrite that story and to change the arc of the story. And when, at least for me, what I notice is that as I allow that the story to unfold, as a story, then I can add nuance. I can shift some of the I can shift the narrative. You know, who among us doesn't enjoy a story that has a really rich turn of events to it? And sometimes we enjoy sad stories, sometimes we enjoy horror stories. There are all different flavors that we can appreciate when it comes to the story of our lives. And stories are very much about perspective, right? They're told from a vantage point. They're curated. And this is one of the things, whether we're spirit having a physical experience or we're in this experience of life, still this notion of it being a story that we're telling and that we're part of, and that we're creating, can empower us to shift, as I said, the narrative. And this is something that's so powerful for our individual lives, because we can change the theme of the story, where in the progression, what was experienced as victimhood, for instance, may end up setting the seeds and the foundation for triumph, for celebration, for awakening. And I think so many of us can see that in our lives. And the suffering that we experience provides lessons and awakenings and deepenings and new perspectives and metamorphosis, even transformation, transmutation, from when we move the easy story to be looking at, because I think it's so broadly experienced, is where we move from victimhood, feeling very much at the effect of circumstances, to an empowerment, to moving from that sense of being at the effect of life circumstances, to kind of taking ownership of our fate, so to speak. So the question is, what kind of story are you writing? What kind of story do you want to write? When we look at our lives and say, this doesn't feel like my life. Some of you may have that experience. Well, what would make it feel like your life? What kind of choices can you make? What kind of new perspectives can you develop? What kind of new experiences can you expose yourself to that will shift the story of your life? So I think another common story is one of not belonging. And I was having a conversation with someone yesterday who was talking about having always felt like an outsider. And I have to say that that's an experience that I certainly had for most of my life, and still, still feel like not so sure what this human thing is, not so sure how to be in this world, not so sure how things work here. And I am suspecting that the folks that are drawn to listening to this, to these musings each morning, are folks that have a similar experience of kind of being the outsider. And in that story that I've had about being an outsider, sort of on a solitary journey through most of life, what I see in the storyline that's changing is that we're finding each other. That a lot of us who have experienced being outsiders are finding each other and finding a common voice. So this conversation with this person was about being a light worker. So look at the transition in story. Whether it's true or not true is not particularly relevant to this conversation, but to be casting these lone nomads in the people navigating a an unfriendly terrain, only to at some point find themselves crossing the paths of other similarly minded nomads that are convening as more of a tribe, connecting to one another and having a common purpose to uplift and improve the world, to shift the perspective. So it's an interesting story. I don't know if it's true, but it becomes a story that we can rise to. And why not? Why not craft a story for ourselves that we can rise to, that calls us into greater being, that calls us into greater expression? The stories that we start with are largely given to us through our conditioning, our familial conditioning, through our heritage, through our culture. And as we get older, as we have more experience, many of us choose to be writing our own stories, to choose to make choices that are our own, that are more deeply expressive of our essence, that isn't necessarily wholly a product of that conditioning. And so it's a process of discovery and exploration. It is a hero or Shiro's journey, you know, where we're challenged and rising to the challenge, or sometimes we succumb to the challenge. But it's an adventure. And if we experience our lives as an adventure, like one of these page turners, that we can maybe cultivate some curiosity and anticipation of what's next. And when we allow ourselves that curiosity and that anticipation, all kinds of things can unfold that might not otherwise have occurred. And regardless of that opening, which isn't a minor thing for new evolutions, what does occur is that we have a different relationship to the experience of our lives. I wonder, have you ever gone through something that in the process of going through it is just like, oh, this is just too much, but it's going to make a great story at some point. I imagine that many of us have had that experience where It's just I can't even believe what's happening. We're living through one of those times, I think, in history, culturally, collectively. Like, let's look at our collective story. There's so much crazy happening right now, and so much upheaval. And if we look back, I have looked back at some of the political arcs and circumstances, and oh my gosh, you can't write this stuff. It's so over the top with and wonderful and terrible and chaotic and crazy, and it's what a story. What a story. So if we're here, just if we're here as spirit having an experience, us our greater consciousness having an experience, or the universal oneness having an experience, having multitudes of experiences. What remarkable stories we create. And why not make our story an epic? Why not why not live it to the fullest? All the rhymes and reasons, all the passions, all the experience. So I wonder for you, as you feel into it, what does it feel like what's different in the experience of thinking of your life as a story that's playing itself out rather than something else? I think for me anyway, there's freedom in it. There's freedom from taking it all quite too seriously, partly, and also to introduce a greater spirit of play and curiosity, and maybe even responsibility, ability to respond and to create it. When we make choices for our lives, sometimes those choices are not easy choices, or those choices come with hardship, but when they resonate deeply, when they touch our heart, when they're an expression of our essence, we embrace those hardships even, or we embrace the challenges. It's like going on a hike. We might decide that we want to just hike on flat, easy ground, and then there are times when we want to get to the top of that mountain, or we want to get to the top of that hill just because there's a top there. Just why not? And so we give ourselves that challenge, and there may be stumbles along the way, and we may get out of breath, and we may need to just stop and rest along the way, but we're committed to get to that top of the mountain just because we've set that challenge for ourselves. And what if we look at our lives as the challenges that we've set for ourselves? What if we orchestrated this before we showed up, and everything is unfolding just perfectly? Like the story is really perfectly written. What if? Even the stuff we don't like, maybe especially the stuff we don't like, because I don't believe that the only growth comes through hardship, but some of the greatest growth happens too because we're challenged to make ourselves rise. So we can allow life to present its own challenges, or we can take on our own challenges that inspire us to to rise, to grow, to expand, to become our greater selves. And that takes stretching. So Rosalind says, being stuck on the hamster wheel, thinking, when will I enjoy life? When will I retire? If I didn't need to show up at a job, what would I be doing instead? Yes, Rosalind, those are dangerous questions when we ask them with seriousness rather than as a woe is me kind of complaint, right? It's like, well, when will I enjoy life? When will I choose to enjoy life? You know, when will I so a big part of this is being responsible for our decisions, I think, because I'll use myself as an example. For years and years and years, it seems like I have had a dream of how I wanted to live my life, and have often felt like this isn't my life, you know? And I made a decision and have made that same decision over and over and over again to stay where I was until my mother was situated, either had passed or was situated in a place where she had support and was okay, you know, was taken care of. I wasn't going to leave her on her own. And I made that choice again and again. I could have left, but I chose not to do that. And now it's happening that we're getting her situated in a situation where she has other supports. She'll be moving in with my brother in another place in Florida. And this for me has given me the freedom. It's not that she granted it, but it's that I have granted myself the freedom to say, okay, now's my turn to have life the way that I have been dreaming of it. So these are my choices. I'm the one that decided I was going to wait. I'm the one that decided now's the time. And so the question, when will I enjoy life? That's a great question. When will you allow yourself to enjoy life? And what will that look like? What will that look like? And in this choice that I've made, it means uprooting the familiar in every way, and putting myself in a very, very different situation with all kinds of unknowns, and it means overcoming a lot of obstacles, most of which are my own. So we can become very comfortable and complacent even with the familiar. And so recognizing I'm choosing this is empowering. If we're choosing to stay, let's be aligned with that choice. Let's make the most of that choice. And again, these questions can be really disruptive. When will I enjoy life? When will I retire? What does retirement mean? You know, what would I be doing instead? That's a really important question. What would I choose to do if I could do whatever I wanted? And then it's a matter of mustering the courage, because it does take courage to make that kind of change and step into the unknown and what ifs, all the what ifs. But that's the writing of our epic, right? That's where we get to really create our own story rather than kind of living out somebody else's storyline in a way. So if there's anything I could encourage, it's finding your story and living it, like writing the story you want to write. And it's not like it's necessarily easy, right? But magic happens when we align with that. Magic happens when we are really in our commitment for our own expression. Doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be easy. Doesn't mean there won't be tears along the way. But the fulfillment and the reward of it is greater than we can imagine. So that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And as always, it's just such a gift to be able to have this opportunity to muse together, to explore together what it is to be human. So until next time, so much